Great. Welcome everyone to the Joint Accessibility Committee meeting for August 28th. It's lovely to have everyone here. We can do a bit of a roll call. I do believe we're only missing one person so far, but as we've got a guest in the room, maybe we could go around and just introduce ourselves for Chris's benefit. And I might start online. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm Ben Dykstra. I've been a member of this committee for a few months now, and I think whether you're new or you've been on it a while, it's an interesting experience.
Thank you. Lisa?
I'm Lisa Shell. I'm the Deputy Mayor for the Township of Minden Hills and a member of County Council.
Great. And Walt?
Hello, I'm Walt McKechnie, Deputy Mayor of Municipality Dysart. And here I am, I'm at home, and I'm going to be gone for a couple minutes, but I'll be right back.
Great. And I might just go to the room first and then get to our guests. Anne, do you want to introduce yourself in a word?
In a word. Anne Jackson, happy to help with the accessibility issues.
Thank you, Anne. And Kathy?
Kathy Hughes, member of the committee.
Great, thank you. And with us today, we have Andrea Mueller. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I think I've met most of you in person before, and I know who Chris is. So
Okay,
hello.
great, good. So Chris, do you want to, Chris, why don't you come on up?
Thank you. Chris Card, I am the Parks and Recreation Manager for the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
Lovely. And C, so I didn't even get to you.
Yeah, I'm Cease Ryle. I'm the Deputy Mayor of Municipality Highlands East and a member of County Council.
And I think I know everyone. Jennifer Dayu, County Council member from Algonquin Highlands. Wonderful. So we respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Please. Ben to move and Cease to second.
Be it resolved that the August 28th, 2024 Haliburton County Joint Accessibility Committee agenda be approved.
All in favor? Great. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Seeing none. May I have a mover and a seconder unless there are comments or alterations recommended for the minutes of the June 26th meeting? Everyone fine with that? So a mover and a seconder? Cease and Lisa?
That the minutes of the June 26th, 2024 meeting of the Haliburton County Joint Accessibility Committee be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? And that's moved, that's approved. Good. Great. So I'd like to welcome Chris Card from Township of Algonquin Highlands to our meeting to present the Oxtongue Lake Community Central Green Space proposal, which has been something that we've been looking forward to in Algonquin Highlands and certainly up at my neck of the woods for a while now. So it's great to finally have it come to this committee for some conversation before we move ahead. Chris, do you want to take over and tell us about it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me today. So what's before you today is the development of the installation of a swing set along with an accessible pathway that links parking to an existing pavilion and then to an existing accessible vault privy and to the newly proposed swing set. The swing set we're proposing, I do have an image in the information package here, which it's a very simple 2-bay swing set that we'd have half as regular what's called belt seats, which you'd be used to seeing in a typical playground swing set setup. and then the addition of a toddler seat, followed by an accessibility seat. For the swing set area, we're proposing and budget supports the use of an engineered wood fiber, which meets the CSA standards for playgrounds while also being endorsed by Parks Recreation Ontario as a cost-effective alternative to rubberized surfaces that have an accessibility component available with them. The pathway we're installing is proposed as a crushed granite pathway that would be 6 feet wide from the parking area to the pavilion to the swing set, and then over to the outhouse or vault privy as it's marked on the map. We've used this material elsewhere in other parks that we have very successfully. It is a material that has been brought before this committee in the past and supported, and is also a material suggested as being very a cost-effective method of achieving accessibility in this type of setting. It'd be compacted, so unlike a gravel pathway, which is where my mind tends to go when I first hear something like crushed granite, where you'd expect a loose fill. In this case, it's once compacted as solid as an asphalt type surface. So before you today, looking for input on the overall plan, and specifically the act under the regulations for the built environment talks about speaking to the committee about rest areas and the placement thereof, or the need, even if there is a need for them. So looking for some feedback on that as well, knowing that the pavilion's available. And what I would look at, and what we've done in other locations such as this, is we have a number of picnic tables that are AODA or accessibility compliant picnic tables that we place along the pathway if needed, based on the advice of the committee. So that's a general overview, and certainly looking forward to hearing what the committee might have to say and offer.
Before I open to the floor, I've got a little question for clarification. Around the back of the building, we're hoping to make the entrance at some point wheelchair accessible. So would you include a pathway to get there at this stage, or would that happen later on?
It hasn't been included in this stage, no. It is something that would have to be looked at as part of that project, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments? And I'm afraid I can't see folks on the screen anymore. Do you think we could change our view? Thank you. Please. Oh, yeah, I'm turning it.
So has anybody tried using this specific type of a swing to get somebody who has quite severe mobility issues on there? I mean, if it was me, I'd be sitting thinking, is it going to be sort of like a transfer like this, or is this something that could be like included, like almost like a step laddery sort of a thing, or as something, some kind of a step to aid in this? I'm not sure. It's just if it's on a sort of, I understand it's very compact and a surface, but it just, I can just see it, somebody slipping and having some issues getting into this.
Absolutely. And as you say that, what I'm picturing is the transfer point, I think, is what you're referring to. And I can certainly see what you're saying about you're transferring. Let's say there's an individual who's using an assistive device like a wheelchair, and they're transferring from the wheelchair to the swing. There'd be a potential for it to swing as it's happening. So my thought, just on looking at it, because this is something that is offered as an option from the playground design companies, is that it would have to be held if that were the case. So there would have to be an assist. I haven't seen any alternatives offered to this type of thing. If there's anything that's possible that you might be aware of, I'd be certainly happy to consider it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, Sue.
So regarding the swing, this is typically my family uses this type of swing. And it is difficult to transfer to, but to be honest, we haven't found a swing that's easy to transfer to. I think, you know, if it was a 2-person lift, that would probably be easier, but it's not always, that's not always available we don't always have 2 people when we take our family out. Sorry, 2 adults, I should say. We certainly have a lot of people. There is a swing, however, at Elvin Johnson Park that I think has a different harness piece. And I'm just wondering if that one is a possibility or if you try not to use that type, only because for this swing, we find it's really tricky for in our case, kids who are hypotonic, so who they are a little, it's harder for them to have a more rigid posture. This is a swing that they can't be as free on because we have to hover always, because they can slide out really easily because they aren't able to sort of keep their posture straight, if that makes sense. The one at Elvin Johnson, I think I don't know if this is a Gen swing, but the one at Elvin Johnson, I think is a Gen swing and has I think a fabric harness, if I recall correctly. And that one works a little better, although I imagine that the maintenance for that swing is trickier, because I know that when I see that swing in different locations, it's often the clasp is broken, or, you know, the material, it gets dirty. So I don't know if that was all taken into consideration, and maybe that's why this swing was chosen, but that's just something that we've noticed over time. But in terms of transferring, I'm two people transfer is safest in any situation probably, but doesn't always work out that way.
Because even if you had a way of sort of tethering it in place whilst you did the transfer, and then you could sort of like let it free, then that might be helpful.
Cease.
Yeah, I noticed on the thing, it says existing vault privy. My question is the current privy or one perhaps in a second generation capable of handling wheelchairs or people that have mobility challenges in a confined space? Because a lot of times, I know the ones that we have in Highlands East, and I'm going to point out our flaw, are not wheelchair accessible at the moment. However, we do know that there are 2 of them that are going to probably need to be modified in the next 3 or 4 years. And when we do that, we will ensure that they are wheelchair accessible. So if it's not there, are there plans perhaps to make them wheelchair accessible?
Yes, thank you. The one that is there is wheelchair accessible. We worked with the supply company who does provide an AODA compliant option. And in this case, it's a much wider outhouse, if you will, than a typical single situation. And I don't know the measurements off of the top of my head, but it does meet the requirements for turnaround space, etc. We've put them in use in several of our other park spaces, and I've never had any comments saying that they've been a challenge. So we're going to continue to use those ones. Yeah. And if I may.
Yeah, please.
To Sue's point, is fantastic information, because I manage the Elvin Johnson Park location as well. And of course, this project goes through a request for proposal process. And for the purposes of this meeting, this was an example of the type of swing possibility. So that type of input is fantastic to have, because when we get to the purchase stage, I can have that conversation with the supplier, that material is a better option.
I do want to note that that's based on what works for our family. There might be a family that says this is the one that works for them. So I'm not knocking the swing in any way, but I just wanted to note that is a challenge for us. And also, I know that we have spoken about this before many years ago, but I just wanted to commend this particular swing set in that the swings aren't separated from each other. So in the past, we've talked about how sometimes the accessible swing comes as a separate swing set altogether, but this allows kids to or older kids, teens, to swing together, I think, a little more easily. So I appreciate that aspect of it for sure.
Ben, did you have your hand up or were you stretching?
Was just stretching.
Okay. I've got a question. The 6-foot minimum width to the pathway, is that AODA standard, or how did we arrive at the 6-foot width?
It's a great question. The standard is just under, well, it's 5 feet, or no, it's that 1,500 millimeters, 1.5 meters that you were discussing earlier, which 6 feet is beyond that. But the reason that we go with 6 feet is it's easy to install because that's the width of the bucket on a skid steer. So you can make it that exact width and lay down the path. Whereas if you were to go less than 6 feet, your options are to then go to a smaller skid steer and widen it by hand, or go with the wider one and make it smaller by hand.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. The details of implementation are always so interesting. For the sake of a single foot, yeah, I get why you would do that. Certainly, yeah. Another question I have, I guess, for Sue or for Anne, for anyone who's got this information, would be, and obviously for yourself, Chris, but this is a game changer for Oxtongue Lake. Oxtongue is my neck of the woods. It's a well-loved community center by the locals, and occasionally people stop on their way into Algonquin Park because it's on the route into the park. For these outdoor facilities to be accessible is truly a game changer. There's a beautiful gazebo there where people can stop on the way into the park to have picnics, and then use the facilities, which will now be accessible as well because of the pathway. There's a place for kids. The swing set is just the newest piece of a fabric which is now being stitched together to be made more accessible. So question is, what platform might there be that we can advertise this so that families coming through Oxtongue on their way into Algonquin Park know, oh wait, this is actually a really great place where we can stop and have our picnic and use the facilities and do all of those things before we get into the park proper, where there are tremendous different distances between facilities. Is there an app that we can make sure that this is included on, so that travelers know that we will be open for business in this way? Yes, Kathy.
There is a site on Facebook and probably Instagram, Ontario Day Tripper, which is pretty much amazing. Anybody can put in any question and say, I'm going into this area, I'm looking for this, and information that comes up there is phenomenal.
Okay. And is it response-based, or is there a place where we could log this so that others can just find it without us answering that question? You're not sure?
I don't know.
Yes, Anne.
I'm just trying to look up the power of the internet here, but there's a lady called Mayan Ziff who has Access Now, I think is what it's called. And you can just get the app and you will go along and you'll just say, yes, this is wheelchair accessible. So it's a community-based initiative. So people will go around and say, yes, this has an accessible bathroom. And so other people with accessibilities know that this is good for them. I think I'm almost certain it's called Access Now.
Okay.
The lady who runs it's called Mayan Ziff, who is herself is in a wheelchair. So
Okay, great. I think that would be worthwhile looking into for sure. All of our spaces where we offer those facilities.
There is also an accessible playground list that was, I believe a mom started it last year. I can send it to you, Chris. I'll find it and send it to you or send you her contact. But for the benefit of others who might be listening, I'm wondering if maybe we can share it somehow.
In the minutes even.
In the minutes. Okay, perfect.
Any other comments or questions for Chris?
I think he also wanted to hear about spaces to sit. Did we discuss that? No? Okay.
That's exactly right. Thank you. It refers to, I'm just looking at the standard here about, well, it essentially ad hoc is yeah, that's exactly it. Rest areas along exterior path of travel is what they're referred to in that municipality shall consult on rest areas. And that's where it doesn't list a standard essentially for distance between rest areas. So that kind of experience base is what I'd look to.
Yeah, the furthest distance, I suppose, would be to the vault privy. The gazebo is there and acts as a de facto rest area already. But I don't know, are there distance recommendations? Yes, Sue. Ben, oh, sorry, Ben, I don't see the hand in the corner there. Yes, please, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in terms of trying to raise awareness for the changes that we're doing, we could definitely put this up on our own website, but I was also thinking that maybe once the park changes are implemented, why don't we just do an advertisement on Canoe FM radio? I don't know if the signal would transfer all the way to wherever that lake is, but I think maybe once we could implement the changes, maybe we could do an ad on Canoe FM about how all these changes have been put in place and how this would be a great little spot for families to come and check it out. I know summer's almost over, but I still think it would be a good idea.
I like that a lot, because if folks are coming up from the lower end of Halliburton to visit Algonquin Park, ours is the main gateway into the park, and that would be an ideal rest area on that road up. So that, yeah, Canoe FM would certainly hit a lot of folk. It's a great idea. Yeah.
Just regarding rest spaces, shade is always helpful. The ability to plug in devices, any mobility equipment that requires charging is always nice to see. Lighting is really important along pathways, sometimes off pathways, depending on how adventurous you are. And if there's access to water, that's helpful. Maybe it wouldn't be included in this type of planning, but just something to think about.
I think we at the gazebo, is there an external plug as well? There, we did put power in, so there must be an external plug there.
There is one there. Yeah, absolutely. But not along any of the pathway spaces, but it's certainly opportunity as we continue to develop the space.
Any thoughts on distance between point to point that might require a rest area? Do you recall what the distances are? Is it right here on the map?
It's not, and just as I was sitting back there, I realized I didn't put the distances on. I really should have. So I've written them on mine. The furthest distance of the one from the pavilion to the vault privy is 91 feet. The other locations are over to the swing set. It's only going to be approximately 21 feet by the time you put in the total surfacing area. And then around the pavilion is from the parking area to the backside of the pavilion's 38 feet. So 38, 91, and 21. With seating in the pavilion.
Any thoughts on those distances? Is that? Yes, Anne.
The 91 seems quite long, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Without a rest. It would be nice if you could just even have a couple of benches or something like that along that stretch.
Yeah, that might be.
That's my thought too. Yeah.
Yes, he's.
I suggest that if you are considering benches, that the benches have arms.
That's a good idea.
That would enable people to push to get up if they need
Yep.
assistance.
Yep.
I was just I have my hand up, but I was also gonna say possibly, the installation of park benches, because 91 feet's quite a bit. I mean, I can walk if I have a walker coming in and there may be a lot of people using wheelchairs, scooters, whatnot, but I mean, I can only walk about 10 feet before I need to sit down, so maybe we could get some park benches and maybe install some cushions on top of it, like maybe those kind that you can, I don't know if there is a cushion that you could stick on a park bench that will stay still, but I mean, I do feel like even if you do install a park bench, you gotta make sure that at least it's a comfortable park bench.
Yeah, I think that's the ongoing trial of municipalities everywhere as to how to have soft coverings on outdoor features, and I'm sure it's a question of continued debate and consideration for parks.
Oh yeah, I went to the Grove Theater several weeks ago and all those seats, even though it's a forested theater, were all made of wood. So I was like, thankfully I brought my wheelchair.
Yeah, yeah, the nicest seat in the house.
Yes.
The other thing that I really like about the location of a potential bench between the privy and the gazebo is, presuming it faces out, which I'm confident it would, it's actually facing, it would face out towards where people will be playing soccer or flying kites or doing whatever else. It would be one of those universal assets that does not look like it is there for the purposes of being accessible. It is a wonderful feature to have in the space. It helps people as well, and as importantly, have a rest as they get from A to B, which is always great. No, I think that sounds like a good consideration. Any final thoughts? Do you think you have everything you need then, Chris?
Yeah, this has been fantastic.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we've got a resolution to receive.
Yes, and I have with committee's input, I have drafted 3 suggestions.
Oh, okay, great.
Included them. So if I may, I'll
Yeah.
just go ahead.
Please.
Be it resolved that the Joint Accessibility Committee received the delegation from Chris Cart on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands, and that the Joint Accessibility Committee makes the following suggestions. Consider different accessible swing types and the related transfer options, rest areas, shaded, lit, and potential outlets to be used for charging devices, and benches. Consider purchasing and installing ones with arms along the 91-foot section. Does that capture what committee, the discussion accurately?
Can we include Ben's suggestion perhaps to explore what kind of I don't know what you would call it, a cushion, an outside cushion option might be? I know they're hard to, I'm not sure anyone has cracked that nut, but I think it would be good to just explore what the state of the art is.
Also, I mean, before we wrap this up, is there a possibility that in this particular park, because we've been talking about the communication boards in different areas, would it be possible that maybe there would be one put in that particular park area?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point, Ben. Would that be for Chris's application, or would that be for us? How would you go about that?
So this committee has previously, we have some funding set aside for one communication board in a playground or park of the member municipalities choosing to be installed, you know, where you want, we'll help fund one board. There is always an option to purchase more boards and or to choose this location as the space for the board. But that's, I think, more up to Chris. Happy to chat with you about it whenever you need any support.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, but it becomes a good contender for that for sure. So yeah, when Algonquin Highlands comes to that part of their debate on where they might want to install that and or purchase others, we'll let them consider Oxtongue Lake at the same time. It's a really good point, Ben. Thank you.
Sorry, so would you like that reflected just in the minutes that we've had a discussion and that
Sure,
Chris will take that back?
Yeah.
And Algonquin Highlands will consider it?
that'd be lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So could I have a mover and a seconder for that a series of recommendations? Kathy and Anne. And does anyone need to hear the resolution again? You're fine. All right, all in favor? Wonderful. That's carried. Thank you very much, Chris, for your time.
Thank you very much. Take care.
So next on our agenda, we've received a really interesting report created by a number of different stakeholders regarding assistive devices in helping Ontario seniors age at home and how they are financed, with some recommendations there on some improvements for Ontario to just make life a little bit simpler through certain tweaks in how these assistive devices are supported. I don't know if anyone has any comments they want to make. There's no one here who can speak to the report. We were not involved in creating the report, but any comments are certainly welcome. And then I've got a resolution to receive as information.
What is the ratio of, say, for example, you're talking about assistive devices. What is the ratio of successful devices being helpful versus breaking down? Because if we're using them on a large scale, you would hate to one day think, okay, I've got this great device to help me reach for things, and then, oh, it just snaps.
Yeah, I wonder if even in section 3 that's covered. I don't know. I'm not sure that this report speaks to that. It's a good question. Yes, Kathy, do you have some insights?
I think that Ben's point is really good because I know here in Minden, there are gentlemen that have their scooters, and if a scooter breaks down, there's no way to get it fixed up here. It's one gentleman said, I can't go out because there's no place to fix it. So that I probably an understanding that assistive devices are needed, suggesting when somebody gets it to get a device that uses snow type tires. Like in schools, we used to put on larger tires so kids could go out in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
So that making application in Haliburton County, there are things that can be done if you know to ask for it.
Right.
And also figuring out how do we support people getting things fixed, because Ben, I don't know how people get anything fixed up here.
Well, thankfully, I'm blessed with a mechanic for a dad, so in that sense, I'm good, but usually you would have to go, in my experience, my mother used to work at the medical supply store, and that's usually where we would try to get things fixed, but normally it would take a long time.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the executive summary here. I'm not sure that the report even refers to access for fixing things.
Yeah, we should find a way to get that because while there are things that are usually covered financially for us, say for example, a power wheelchair eventually breaks down, it's one of those things where it's only covered if you've had the chair for X number of years. Otherwise, then you've pretty much got to go fix it.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is overstepping thingies, but Search has these come in and get your appliances fixed and everything else. I wondered if it could, I know they're their own organization, but I don't know if something like getting wheelchairs fixed or things like that could be included in that or suggested to them and somebody else like that, because there's an awful lot of knowledge here. And sometimes it just needs a direction on where to flow and where can it be most used.
Locally, that's an excellent resource indeed, if those connections are made. Sue,
I can make that connection. I can reach out to Search and just note that we discussed that at this committee and see if they know of somebody who might be able to help with, you know, whatever repairs can be done sort of outside of a shop. Absolutely.
thank you, that's great. Cease.
The other thing too, we discussed this once upon a time before, is, and this had to do with where we're located and the off roads that we have, the private roads that we have. And that a lot of the chairs that are built, motorized chairs, are built for pavement or something to that effect. What we need is we need up here somebody that can supply an off-road motorized chair that would enable somebody to take a dirt road or take a trail because they want to go down a trail and enjoy the scenery without having curbs and stuff on it. Stupid question, but I'm wondering if it's something that if it's not done by someone who is, or the main function is to use accessibility, if we could convince one of the off-road dealers to look at off-road vehicles, because they are a vehicle, and there's probably a lot of people who would want to use them.
Or we could just install more pavement.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if that would be worth seeing, if there was a way that any one of our ATV people would be interested in bringing in a brand of motorized chairs that would enable the average public who want to get out to go to where they otherwise can't get. Just saying.
They have some amazing ones with the tracks, right? That can go almost anywhere. They're fantastic vehicles.
And I think those are available privately, but I'm not sure you're referring to like a lending service or something like that for motorized vehicles.
I'm thinking either way, just if someone has the ability to buy one or can get some kind of a financial assistance to get one, then that would be great. Again, a lot of times you can only do that if you have a use for it. If you're only taking it out once a year, it doesn't really make sense to spend that kind of money. But then if they could rent them at an ATV association or a store or outlet or anywhere else for that matter, that would be an awesome opportunity.
Although I feel like that opens up another can of worms because because of the type of vehicle that an ATV is, don't you need a license for that kind of thing? Like you would need a driver's license. Not everyone in a wheelchair is capable of getting a driver's license.
No, that's not what I meant, Ben. I mean a more robust chair, not an ATV. It would still be
Okay, I was
electric
getting
and it
confused.
would still follow all the rules of accessibility, but it would be more robust. You would be able to take it somewhere that a conventional motorized chair may not be able to go.
Oh, okay.
They would tend to have tracks, wouldn't they, rather than wheels for that. And they can go up steps and hills and things like that. They're amazing machines. And I agree with you. Why isn't there a supplier here? Maybe if we could make a demand or suggest to someone there's a demand here, they maybe start stocking them in shops. I think that's more what you're thinking, right?
Yeah, even
Yeah.
if they can't do that, like say, for instance, if I want a specific vehicle, I book it ahead of time. So let's say it may not be practical in Halliburton County to have them sitting in the shop waiting for somebody to come. But if you know you're going to be doing it in 2 weeks' time, you can go to this place and they'll order one and have it ready for you for a week, day, whatever you take, and go out. So just a thought.
If I might go back a subject for a minute with respect to the repair of assistant devices, especially up here in a rural area, I wonder if it would be of interest to the committee to write a very short note to the authors of the report to say, in your advocacy efforts, please do not forget that these things also need to be repaired. And in a place like Halliburton, a key challenge is to find a place that can do it. And certainly for more complicated devices, funding required for those repairs would not be off the mark either when it comes to supporting folks to do exactly what they're trying to support people to do through the report. And I think in a single paragraph, we could probably cover that and send it off to the authors. Would
Yeah.
people feel comfortable with that? Yeah. Sue, is that something that we might ask your support on as well? Just a very short note that in consideration of this excellent report, it would be our experience to suggest that X, Y, and Z. That would be wonderful. Thank you. All right. So may I have a mover and a seconder then for that resolution to receive and a recommendation for a couple of quick follow-ups? Ben is moving and to second. And we'll give Michelle a minute to craft her message. Lisa. Oh, you were moving or seconding, Lisa? You weren't, yeah, okay, yeah. Got it. Really good suggestions today. It's a pleasure to listen to the ideas in the room and on the screen today. Whenever you're ready. Ben and Anne. Yes, please.
Be it resolved that the role of assistive devices in helping Ontario seniors at home correspondence be received as information, and that staff be directed to forward a letter to the report authors regarding the repair of such devices and the related challenges in rural communities.
Before we move that officially, I'm not sure we've got the ability to direct staff. So perhaps we could request staff, and I could also confirm it with Mr. Dyke just to be sure that that's okay.
Sure, requested.
That would be great.
Just change directed to requested.
Thank you.
Yep. Would you like me to read it again?
I don't think so. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. Great. So all in favor? Lovely. Thank you. Superb. So Andrea, thank you for joining us on this next item, which is our very exciting communications board. You are looking for some thoughts and comments regarding the installation of the approved design of the board. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. So we are ready to go. We'd love to get these boards in this year. So and I said the boards because we're actually putting in two. So there's the one that Halliburton County is covering, and then we have a grant for the Rotary Beach side of the park. So we'd like to put into both in the Head Lake Park area. The schematics are attached. So we're looking at, these were recommendations from the people that created the board for us. So from McCart Studios. There was a lot of back and forth over with Sue was involved with this too, just on what we thought would work best. We fell upon the schematics that you see and the board that you see. So the board itself is almost 8 feet long, just shy of 8 feet, and 2 feet tall. The suggestion is that the posts are put in the ground and that the bottom of the board is 30 inches from the ground. So we're trying to think of people that are sitting down or that are small, like children and everything, to be able to reach all the symbols on the board. So we're looking for input to see if this schematic looks like it would work for the board.
Thank you. Thoughts on that? Yes, Anne.
It's you're going to have snow there too, aren't you? So you're going to have a little bit of you know, a gap there for when kids are out when it's not the nicest of weather. So I think the 30 inches would work. Maybe a little tall for some people to be able to touch it, smaller kids to touch it. I mean, would there be some kind of idea of maybe having a step on there as well?
He had talked about like even some sort of platform, but then, sorry, just 1 second. We negated that just for like building and everything, but perhaps a step, yeah.
I think because we are all of various heights and, you know, possibly the most standard feature amongst us all is the average height of a wheelchair. Is that fair to say? Or are wheelchair heights also as variable? Yeah, now that I think about it, I think they might be. So
Yeah, they can be variable depending on the make and model, and they make chairs for individuals of different ages as well. So sometimes depending on age, they can be either shorter, taller, or if you want a manual versus a power one, the power one is usually a few inches taller than the regular manual.
right, thank you. So Andrea, if you think that 30 inches kind of hits that best as we can achieve average, then that might be where we should go. It's the best we can do. Anyone opposed? Kathy.
My question is, if you're 4 years old and you're wanting to use this as the method you're communicating with, 30 inches is too tall. And so you have a targeted audience of everyone, but little ones who are using this as their method to communicate, they're not going to be able to reach to the top.
Which is why a step might come in handy, because that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Little nonverbal kids wanting to touch, it's a little bit high for some of them, isn't it?
Would it make sense to lower it by 6 inches and go somewhere around like the 24-inch mark? So it's 2 feet off the ground. That still provides a gap for snow.
That would be about up here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, from
I think that the idea of having a platform is counterproductive because if you have somebody as tall as myself or Walt, we'd have to almost lay down in order to use it. Having said that, if someone is 4 or 5 years old, it's not the same. So I'd be more inclined to look at a step that you could, if you needed it, you step on it and you can reach, and if you don't, then you stand beside it and reach. It's just a thought. I don't know if that would be doable, but it might be a compromise so that you don't have to deal with trying to design the perfect solution.
Is there something we could install to the communication board? I don't know what you would install, but I'm thinking you could make it like you could install it at one particular height, but then let's say a couple walks up to it and they realize, okay, their kid's too short to be able to reach it. Pull on something like a rope and it lowers it a little bit so it's more on their level.
we explored that with the company that made it. The problem is with what we've discovered with a lot of things, anything with moving parts becomes something harder for maintenance, and just there's pinch points and different things, because we had looked at that exact option of being able to have a board that you could adjust the height of. It didn't come across as something that would maybe work in our outdoor setting with the park and just the kind of use we get down there with other issues. I'm not sure you've heard of some of the other issues we've had at the park with vandalism, etc.
So, I'm sorry, Michelle?
Question for Andrea. Is there a location in the park where you could have almost like a small plastic enclosure where you could have laminated copies of the board and maybe a notation on here that, see such and such a location for a smaller version of it for those younger children that may not be able to reach the board, like just another place to access it, just like a laminated copy?
Yeah,
Have you
actually,
explored that?
we were,
option?
sorry, yeah, we were planning on creating, it wouldn't be one whole board, but having like paper-sized laminated tablets, so you'd see sections of the board to have at the Welcome Center for people to use and to borrow. We've already, yeah, we had discussed that because, and I know we discussed too, putting those in areas where people can find them and see them so that they can take use of it and borrow it and actually walk around with it.
We also have right on the board a QR code for people to visit a website that shares information about what the boards are and how they work and where they are throughout the county once we're at that stage. And on that website, we're including a downloadable version of the board so that people can actually have it on their phones or their iPads as they walk around. And also a list of the words that are on the board if you know people are using readers to if the symbol gets too complicated for readers to know what the list of words is, so a separate accessible list, just so that folks can walk around with it, roll around with it, move it around the playground with them.
I wonder if the simple idea of having a pole with a tie attached to it, I don't know, maybe those sorts of things are what fall apart within the first month. But is that something that has been considered so that someone could just use a pole to point?
It hasn't been considered, but I can definitely ask about that. It was funny. That was something that came to my mind when this discussion first started just this afternoon. And, you see it work with musical instruments in the park and everything.
Right.
So I think if it's made of the right material and it has the right kind of attachment, it should hopefully remain in place and work. And we just have to make sure that it's something that somebody can't wrap around themselves.
Yeah. Kathy?
Being a school administrator for a lot of years, a pole means you have a weapon. It not meaning a weapon,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
like you'd have to be very careful because somebody horsing around in the park late at night has something they can pull and whack, and just it would be a consideration to find something very safe.
Yes, and
Just going back to it, I think lowering it slightly would be helpful. Because if somebody's in a wheelchair or something, then, that they hopefully can, it's easier to bend down than a little kid to have to bend up. So I think maybe lowering it a little bit might be helpful.
do others concur that that might be the most straightforward way forward on this point? Anyone against? So it would be by about 6 inches to maybe the 2 foot mark. Is that what's recommended? And that would be to the lower lip. Okay. Any other comments? Anyone opposed? So I think that would be the recommendation of the committee.
Thank you.
By 6 inches. Yes, please.
Andrea, can you share with us the exciting news of when this communication board is planned on being installed generally?
As soon as we get the okay on the design, so if I say that we'd like it lowered slightly, our staff are ready to go purchase the wood, and Joe already has the sign ready for us, so we'll be ready to install it in the next few weeks.
Wow, that's exciting.
Excited.
Good project come to fruition. Yeah. All right, great. So could I have a mover and a seconder? Anne and Walt.
Be it resolved that the Joint Accessibility Committee receives for information the AAC board schematic and that the committee makes the following suggestion: consider lowering the overall schematic by 6 inches.
All in favor? That is carried. congratulations, and off you go to install this wonderful new thing. I can't wait to pass by and see what it looks like in real life.
Thank you. I'll share pictures with Sue and she can share them with you at
Yeah,
the next meeting.
It's a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marvelous. So we're coming up to our second last item. There is a design checklist for accessible site plans for us to review and comment on. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to take a look at that list. Sue, would you like to do you want to offer any prefacing thoughts?
That's a good question. Do I? I don't think so. I tried to use the checklist that we had and just add the points to it that were mentioned by the committee. If I missed anything, please let me know. I also tried to add the metric measurements or the imperial measurements. That was an interesting activity for me. So please feel free to share. You might want to email me any errors you see, and I will keep working on it. And thank you to my dad who answered my call at 7 o'clock in the morning one day to help me out with that a little. But we can still definitely make some improvement.
The question I had, and it actually is on the metrics, is millimeter rather than centimeter the standard way of doing things?
I'm not the person to ask about that. I'm not entirely sure. This is what I could find online.
Right. Cease.
I think when you're looking at the smaller distances, because we're not doing anything that's micro-sized. Typically, in all the construction that I've ever dealt with, you either use meters or centimeters. Because it's something, a centimeter, call it what you like, is a little less than half an inch. And a meter is just a little bit larger than 6 feet. So at the end of the day, it's something that everybody can kind of relate to. So a suggestion is that if we could standardize in metric to meters or portions of a meter or centimeters, it would probably be easier for people to estimate what it is we're looking at. Because it's hard to rationalize 3,400 millimeters until you realize, well, that's 3.4 meters, which is roughly 10 feet.
Thank you for that.
Any other comments for, that's okay. That's okay. Don't worry. Jill. Yes,
if we're-
Ben.
If we're talking about businesses, I know I probably should have brought it up earlier, but at the last meeting, we talked about writing up a report for businesses that may benefit from the stopgap motion project.
Oh,
I-
yes, and that are going to talk about next. But would you like to relate that to this list specifically? In which case, carry on. And if not, I've got you down as speaking next on that very point.
No, we can do that later.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure it didn't get lost in the meeting.
Oh, yeah. No, it's right here. So anything else on the content? I find it a really solid, well laid out, easy to follow list. Yeah. Yeah, please.
One of the things that we suggested the last time we talked about this, and I think it should be going, and first off, take whatever time you need to sort out what you. But I think if it's possible, we should send one of these to the people who are making the next presentation to us, and just ask them if they would try it. Just give it a go and see what you think, and maybe we can get some comments back from a user as to how difficult it was to use and if it added any value to what they were trying to do.
It's a good idea. They might appreciate thinking through some of the questions in advance that we might have for them. Yeah. I'm just sort of glancing through it again quickly, is there any comment on snow in this list? Consideration given for snow accumulation, that sort of thing?
In under parking, the last point on page 2 reads snow storage or loading and delivery locations are not adjacent to designated accessible parking
Right,
areas.
yeah, no, that's, yeah, good, yeah. Anything? Looks like, yeah, it's a great list. Really, really good list. So do we have a resolution to accept and recommend, is it accept and then recommend to county council? Or what's the resolution?
Currently the resolution reads, be it resolved that the accessible design checklist for site plans be received and that the Joint Accessibility Committee makes the following recommendations. Change the measurements from millimeters to centimeters or meters throughout the document.
And then what is the next step on its journey? Does it go to county council or is it just a staff implemented?
It's sorry,
Please.
yeah, it's my understanding that this is a tool for committee, but that's not saying that the committee could not refer it to council just for review and further consideration.
So
Yeah.
Or for presentation so that
For
there are,
information.
yeah, for information so that they're aware that these are the sorts of considerations that we're hoping to, ensure are always rolled out across the county and be aware. That would be my feeling.
I think that's great.
I think what we're talking about here is just sending it out ahead of time to prospective people that want to come before us. Like today, we could have sent it out to
Yeah.
gentleman here, and he could have said, hey, that worked really good. A few things I missed. It's all done before we get to us. And it's just, I don't like to use the word rubber stamp, but it certainly does, make the people that are applying much more aware of what we're doing, and then they can come back to us with questions.
Yeah.
Here's on the checklist. What exactly do you mean here? Which may help us to fix the checklist.
Yeah, I think that's nice. If we included that in the resolution, that could just be a practice. It's a recommended practice. I think so. I think it's personally think it's important that council be aware of the activities of the committee. Whether that fall under, maybe I leave it to staff to decide how or in which segment of county council that would be presented. We could even send it to the lower tier councils for information, receipt and information. Yes, Kathy.
My question was, how do the municipal councils get this information? Because they're doing the initial approvals of things, so is that how it has to go? County council then goes to lower tier?
In this case, it would, but not for their approval, but certainly for their information and use. I think they would appreciate having that at hand in the Public Works Department. Yeah, I think it should be an official communication of some kind. Would you, as staff members, would you agree with that course of action? Yeah, okay.
We can share.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry, we can share it with county council, and then once it's gone to county council, we can pass it to the member municipalities for sure.
great. Lovely, beautiful. Did we have a mover and a seconder or not yet?
Not
No,
yet.
not yet.
Would you like me to read the full resolution?
Sure, yeah.
So I've just amended it slightly. Be it resolved that the accessible design checklist for site plans be received and that the Joint Accessibility Committee makes the following recommendations. Change the measurements from meters to centimeters or meters throughout the document, and that the document be forwarded to county council for information.
From millimeters to
Millimeters, yes,
Yeah,
to
okay.
centimeters or meters.
Okay, great. Yeah. Good. Mover and a seconder. And cease. And cease. Yeah. Okay. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Wonderful. So, final point on the agenda. Ben and Anne, would one of you like to talk to us about the Stopgap Foundation?
So this is primarily a foundation that will help put in customized ramps for a lot of businesses or help get automatic doors installed. And what I sent was a list of businesses that could benefit either from getting the doors installed, getting a ramp installed throughout the Haliburton County. I'm not exactly sure how the businesses in question, how much they would be able to get it themselves or would require financial assistance. But I think that this is definitely a good project that we could get involved in. I don't know financially how we would, but I know that it would be interesting because they do have a lot of programs that are possible where we could get an opportunity.
And do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I emailed 3 of the different municipalities. I got the emails from you guys, which was great. And so I got an answer from Alicia Barlow, just lovely lady. And so she suggested that they can help spread the word. And so I'm just reading from her email. Is the goal to have an online survey, or how will the interest be gauged or collected? Is there social media promotions or information packages for interested business members? I can imagine we would have to have questions about the kinds of ramps and installations and timelines. We would already be thinking about linking up with the local BIA in Haliburton, sorry, to spread the word. So she had questions. So do we send out an online survey to see the interest? And then we would need to have with that how the funding would be. So how are we going to raise the money for the funding? So those are things that, from my personal point of view, I don't know how, as a private citizen and acting with the committee, we would go about that. But there certainly seems to be an interest from Alicia Barlow. She certainly seems happy to be able to send out some kind of online survey. But she did have questions on, what would we say, and how would we do the funding, that sort of thing. So that's a sort of step forward. But
So just before you continue, Ben, so is there any funding available through Stopgap that we apply for? But is that the idea, or is Stopgap more about information sharing and getting a movement going?
I believe there is funding that you can apply for available on their website. And I'm not against the survey, but I'm just saying, based on the fact that we've done previous surveys for wheelchair and transport accessibility, and that did not go through, I am a bit skeptical about doing an online survey.
Okay.
so how would you suggest then that we would find out if it's viable for us to move forward with this then? Because you need to have to start getting numbers of how many people would want to have the ramps outside their businesses. They would all have to be custom made. So I'm not sure how we would go about finding out who would be interested.
Yeah, and how we would structure that whole affair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether, it would be county. Would you kindly pull up stopgap.ca and hit the get involved button, because there's some great photos of the ramps themselves, and they're completely portable and quite nice looking. We're not talking about any technological advanced thing. It's a very simple, and dare I say, obvious solution.
and lots of colors. They make them fun and exciting. They're great people to work with.
Yeah.
Maybe we, like the list of businesses in question, maybe we could go down there and kind of give I'm not saying online survey with every person in the county, but I'm saying maybe we could go down to those business people and say, okay, what is the biggest issue with customers getting in? Like, what is the biggest problem that a lot of your businesses have? Because I'm sure they've encountered more than once someone trying to get in and they just can't. And then either due to financial reasons or one reason or another. They just can't seem to be able to figure out the problem. Maybe they're just not even aware of the new laws that are being put into place.
Yeah. I completely hear what you're saying. I think just a lot of the time it's simply not thinking about it, not being aware. Have you found it? Stopgap.ca/get involved. There's some nice images there. Let's just take a look at this. Yeah, there we go. Some really, simple, pretty, dare I say. Really nice. Yeah, and there's one in action. Cease, yeah.
I don't know if we've done it before, but, going out, and I think Ben's point was well taken, and surveys by their very nature are time consuming. However, having the ability to have, we talked about the BIA. I don't know if the Chamber of Commerce is someone that we could actually use. And I know in the eastern part of Alberta County, the AGBA, which is the Algonquin Gateway Business Association, is now in the point of resurrecting itself, and it should be effective the first of the year. That being the case, I know in terms of the AGBA that they were certainly interested in a lot of ideas that would, one, improve their businesses, which is obviously making it more accessible, would certainly do that. And they were very community minded as well. So whether that's the same mentality they bring forward or not, I don't know. But it would save a lot of legwork on the part of an individual here or communities here to just make contact with the heads of those two organizations and see if there's any interest there.
That is a good idea. I would also recommend that I go to Gary Dyke, who's our CAO here at the county, and just ask him for his input on, this is an interest of the committee. What does this mean in terms of county? Can we get involved in some way? Can this be a committee project? How might it be structured? How can it not be structured? I don't know all of the moving parts to know how we connect these two. So if people are willing and patient to defer until next meeting, I can commit to come back next meeting with some insight from the CAO on how we use this committee to get involved. If that's all right. Yes. Sue.
One thing that Michelle and I have been discussing is this committee and the opportunity for education pieces and awareness pieces that we can share with the community. And so I wonder if it might be helpful to have somebody from Stopgap come to committee to discuss what this project could look like here, what other municipalities have done. And that way we can invite all of those groups that we've been talking about to attend or to tune in. So it's sort of a webinar. It becomes a webinar, right? But with local conversation. I have seen in other communities that some accessibility committees have hosted a day of a conference, right? So that you could go and you could hear from the folks at Stopgap, and there's different organizations that offer discounted access, or just that they have different programs so that we could learn about those and start implementing them in the community if businesses or organizations or schools or if it's going to work in those member municipality areas. So that is something that we could potentially do, is invite the folks from Stopgap to come and discuss the project, and just let us know how to get started or what we could do here with in collaboration, I think, with your conversation with Mr. Dyke.
Yeah, I think that could probably happen concurrently rather than consecutively, because whether we take on an active role ourselves with the blessing of the county, or whether we are offering that information afternoon to others, it's still something that we can do as a committee. So why don't we do those two things? Yeah. See about inviting someone to come and present and answer questions. And in the meanwhile, I'll commit to talking to
I have the founder of the organization's number.
Oh, connected man. Great, yeah, and there's a contact us button here too.
Oh,
So
I
yeah,
tried
let's,
that already. I haven't got a response on that end.
oh, okay. All right, so let's be in contact there then, Ben, with for that. For sure. Kathy, yeah.
I'm going to ask a question that may have been answered and I didn't hear the answer. What is the role of the Rick Hansen Foundation? Because they do come in and support in similar ways.
Anyone?
I know that I have recently enrolled in training through the Rick Hansen Foundation. I'm not sure of every program that they offer. But yeah.
Question is Stopgap an individual company that is going to come in and sell you a great product? Or Rick Hansen is sort of a foundation that goes everywhere and has certification programs and training and
Everybody for Stopgap that works there is pretty much a volunteer because it's nonprofit.
Yeah, and the Rick Hansen is more how to build something. They are sort of slightly different. Stopgap is more of a let's try and help the community with volunteers, whereas Richard Hans the foundation is more, building for people really with it's more how to get certified to work in the build community. So it's a very different organized type of organization is my understanding.
Okay. Kathy, are you suggesting that maybe before communicating directly with Stopgap, we look at a number of different options rather than jumping on the one?
I think that you collectively look at whoever can provide supports. My understanding is that there was funding available through Rick Hansen because there's, technically by 2025, the world is accessible. And it's not going to be, and I know that there's movements to start to adjust timelines, but I thought that the Rick Hansen Foundation was also another source. So
Okay.
it's something we can look into.
So maybe we can explore that in conjunction with this.
Yeah, we can definitely do both because either way, any support we get's good.
Yeah. Great. Is that sufficiently clear on where we're going with that resolution?
So if I may
Mhm.
receive it for information and I'll make a notation in the minutes simply that we're going to investigate the conversation with Mr. Dyke, the suggestion from Sue, as well as a suggestion from Kathy regarding the Rick Hansen, if that's agreeable.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So
All right, could I have a mover and a seconder for that then? Ben and Kathy.
be it resolved that the Joint Accessibility Committee receives for information the verbal update on the Stopgap Foundation from members Jackson and Dykstra.
All in favor? Marvelous, thank you. And that brings us to our next meeting date, which is set for October the 23rd, 2024 at 1 p.m. Same bat time, same bat place. And could I have a motion to adjourn then? Cease and a seconder, Walt.
Be it resolved that the August 28th, 2024 meeting of the Haliburton County Joint Accessibility Committee now adjourned.
All in favor? Excellent. Thanks, everybody. This has been really, really fruitful. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.